Hi there, this is Matt from howtomakeiPhoneapps.com. Today I want to show you how to use a segmented controller. This is from the class UI Segmented Controller in UI Toolkit. UI Toolkit is the classes that Apple gives us that gives us controls like buttons, sliders, and this segmented control. The segmented control, as you can see here, this is an example of it, is one object that has segments in it that are sort of like buttons. Users can press these buttons to make a selection. Our system will be notified when a button or a segment is pressed, and we'll be able to get information about which button was pressed. The first step to creating one of these is to have a project, and I have myself a view-based project here, and this is just an empty view controller. I'm going to show you how to do this all in code, but you can also use Interface Builder pretty easily with this sort of object as well. The second step is to add a UI label to the controller. So the reason I want a UI label here is because I want to be able to show you what happens when we're going to select these different buttons. So I'm just going to copy and paste my UI button code here, which I'm getting from my my own code library. I'm also going to make sure that I include the code to release the label here, since this is kind of my habit. I always, because I've had so many different issues with memory problems, I almost always, when I create an object, release it immediately. So that's that. The next is to create an array. We're going to use the items in this array to create the segments and in the next step. So I simply have here an array of text objects 1, 2, and 3, ending with nil. Now we actually create the UI segment control object. And as you can see, this is UI segment control. I'm going to call it segment control. And how this is created, I think there are some other ways to do this too, but I just simply use alloc and init with items. And the argument, the parameter here is item array, which is the array we create right above here. So this is basically saying that we're going to have a UI segment control with the segments 1, 2, and 3. Next part is you can play around with this. This is just setting the properties of the control. And you can see by looking at the header files the different things you can do. Looks like I accidentally erased my curly brace. Okay, so I'm just saying it's going to be a plane, and it's going to have it's going to start by having the first selected, and this frame determines where on my surface it's going to appear. The next step is to add the target action. And target action is simply the event that's going to, or the code that's going to execute when a user touches the button, when the event value changes. And finally, we just need to add this to the view and release it. So I'm adding it to the subview, collection of view, and this obviously is a control, and then we're releasing the control. That's because when we add something to a view, the view sort of takes ownership of it, and we don't need to have two references to this control anymore. Okay, so next thing you want to do is to implement the action method, which I'm just pasting out here. So I'm calling it pick one, and the sender here is going to be the UI segmented control itself. So I'm going to use this notation to get a reference to it. And what this basically means is that when a user touches a different button or segment on the segment control, I'm going to change the text label so you can kind of see what's happening. Next step is to release the label, which I already did. Okay, so that is it. I'm going to just try to turn this on and see if it works so we can demo it. And now my iPhone simulator is starting up. Okay, so we have the segment control here. And as you can see, when I press the different segments, the UI label up here gets updated. And that's really it. That's how you use a UI segmented control. This is actually a pretty cool control. You see here the images. You can change how this control looks by just changing the segmented control style property. You can replace these words with images if you want. You can add and remove different segments on the fly when your app is running. So this is a pretty simple but powerful control, and users expect to see this when they're presented with the task of selecting something from a series of options. So that's it. This is how you use UI segmented control.